Who's this from? And you are?
I'm sorry. Those are the questions we ask at the city's meeting like this on the data centers.
Okay.
And they never answered those questions. I was thinking you might be able to look at them. You don't have to answer them tonight.
Yeah, okay. All right.
They're just questions that the public wanted
Okay.
that never got answered.
Okay. We were doing that. Okay. Is there evidence that these AI data centers are being approved in backdoor deals and city councils only pretend to listen to care about public input? I don't think so, but, I have to say, the city council members that I have dealt with have been transparent and accessible, and I'm hoping that you're going to follow up with them. But I'm not aware of any backdoor deals.
You can put Paulding County down as a backdoor deal.
Oh, okay, all right.
But we have pulled all of the records through the commissioners and everybody, and we have all the emails, we have the texts, we have everything, and we have shown that it's a backdoor deal, and we have an attorney lined up.
Okay.
So it is a backdoor deal.
Yeah, we're here talking about City of Marietta, and so I know that
Right,
there
but,
are backdoor deals.
Data centers are coming to Paulding too, and
They're coming everywhere, yes. Okay. In a closed loop water system, is this able to be infinite use? Does it have to be eventually discharged, replaced, or what?
Unknown. I don't know the answer to that question to be able to answer it accurately. The example, again, I think the answer to that is that it may depend. The example I used from Wyoming, it was designed as a truly closed loop system. It has no permanent connection to the discharge. The only reason it was discharged into the local wastewater system is that it was a temporary discharge, which had been approved by the local water utility. So the local water utility knew they were going to get wastewater from this particular facility that was under construction. They just hadn't been made aware of all the constituents that were going to be in that wastewater, which is why they ended up with a unknown kind of bacteria that ended up in the wastewater stream. But again, that was a temporary connection, so it was supposed to be a completely closed loop system with no permanent wastewater discharge.
So actually, this is a question that I had, Chris. And you sort of raised it, what type of water contamination would possibly be found from hyperscale data centers? You alluded to that, and I'm curious about that too, because we've been talking to the Cobb delegation has begun talking with the Cobb County Water Authority, and they're really terrific folks, and I know they work closely with you. And I don't know that they know what to expect in terms of contamination.
I think that's correct. So there are a few data centers that are operating in the state of Georgia that have their own individual wastewater discharge permits, right? So there are two that have their own wastewater treatment systems. And we're familiar, Kentucky Riverkeeper's familiar with both of those permits, and for the most part, those permits look like an industrial wastewater discharge. Now, the question is being raised is whether or not those permits should be looking at other things that they haven't been in the past. And so I don't have, again, it's a bit of an unknown. It's unknown as far as what exactly in these wastewater streams.
Okay. And the third question is local governments reaching out to you for this education. I think there's some that are interested, but only a couple have reached out to me. Any insights into the city council's developing view of this issue? Are they studying data centers, or are their minds made up? I don't know. I mean, I've heard rumors, but when I've spoken directly to city council members, the ones I have spoken to have not have indicated that a final decision has not been made.
Sure. How do you want to do it? Okay. Read them to myself.
All right, we established before this that I was a scientist and can't read, but I got this. No, it's cool. All right, so someone wrote in, I'm worried about the physical data center. If when the AI bubble collapses, can we get them, assuming they get the go-ahead, to sign a decommissioning bond to pay for the damage done to the land, etc.? All right, so yes. So when a landfill rolls into town, they are required to put down a decommissioning bond. This is a known Georgia statute because at the end of a landfill's life, they have to like cap it and do some things and put a golf course on it or whatever they do to landfills. And a decommissioning bond is basically a piece of insurance that the city holds, not the developer, the city holds, so that way there is money available to pay for this should the landfill community go out of business. So this is now this is a known legal thing that you can do in the state of Georgia, and any city can make this a requirement for any large building. So a decommissioning bond is actually a really good idea to prevent the second coming of another plague of mill towns across Georgia, right? So this is a huge thing that you should be asking for, is at the end of it, you don't have this giant hunk of something that someone just becomes a blight on your town.
You got another question?
We have so many questions. Does Chris want to go next?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Chris is reading. All right. I'll do this next one.
Are environmental impact studies being done prior to permitting the building of these data centers? This is necessary to protect public health and the environment. No. Yay! That was a simple answer. Typically, everybody's like, isn't the government going to save us from these things? The answer is 100% no. The only thing that is going to save you is you guys. If there is not in your ordinance that there needs to be an environmental impact study, there will be no environmental impact study.
Here's another one.
I've got a political one. Since AI and data centers have no commonly agreed upon benefits, why are politicians pushing data centers on constituents? Well, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. So I wanted to share with you that there were, and Chris did mention several bills that were introduced that attempted, at the legislature, that attempted to put guardrails into data centers and also to take away the tax breaks. And all of those died in the Senate, even though we have a real strong advocate for protecting consumers in Senator Chuck Hostetler from Rome. And even though he's a chairman and he has a fair amount of power in the Senate, when he finally managed to get one bill to the floor of the Senate, it was the last day for bills to cross from from the House to Senate and Senate to House. And the lieutenant governor, who luckily is no longer, the current lieutenant governor literally shut down and adjourned rather than hear that bill. And so any bills to deal with taking away the tax incentives or anything like that were killed. And so there's good people on both sides, but I would say largely most of the folks who are doing the killing of these bills are Republicans, even though I got a shout out to Chuck Hostetler from Rome.
I got a couple of them. All right. What practices or standards can be implemented that might help prevent the water contamination issue, like what happened with the inadvertent contamination of the metadata facility in Cheyenne, Wyoming, that forced the local utility to the utility told the data center they had to start hauling away their own wastewater. So what sort of practices or standards could avoid this problem that occurred in Wyoming? I mean, there are a couple. The data center operator, I believe the local water utility require the data center operator to be part of what's called a pretreatment program. Industry can be required to have some level of pretreatment of their own wastewater before it is discharged into the municipal wastewater system. So that requires a conversation and negotiation between both the industrial user, like a data center, and the local water utility, and that they are both kind of asking the right questions and providing the right information and answers up front. So having a robust pre-industrial treatment program is one way. And this kind of ties in with, I think, one of the other questions I have here about PFAS contamination and whether or not that could be in wastewater. And it certainly is in wastewater. Whether or not it's in data center wastewater is a bit of an unknown. And by the same token of what I was saying earlier, a local water utility can require disclosure of certain wastewater constituents of their customers. So again, what I have learned is that water utilities have a tremendous amount of influence and power when it comes to data centers, both in telling them, A, how much water they can use, and then B, also managing their wastewater more appropriately. And I know of a couple examples where data centers have showed up and said, hey, we want, in Gainesville, for example, in Hall County, one showed up and said, we want 500,000 gallons of water a day. City of Gainesville said, we'll give you 250, right? So that was just, I don't know the full thought process behind why the number changed, but the utility said, this is what we're able to and willing to give you. And the data center was like, okay, we'll take it. And they decided to try to move on. That project eventually dissolved under the weight of itself. But nonetheless, it is an example of, again, a water utility having a legitimate power in the conversation and the relationship. Let's see. Who is responsible for wastewater disposal compliance testing? Again, it is the local water utility that is taking the wastewater from an industrial customer like a data center. They're the ones that have responsibility for compliance and testing. Let's see.
Amy, do you have any science questions that are on water?
Science questions. All right. Somebody asked about what type of sound barriers can be put up. There's a lot. There's a whole science to sound barriers. As with all of this, Chris is you need to require testing, right? So they're going to come in and they're going to say, we're going to put up a sound barrier, and you're going to be like, of course you are. And the only way to know if the sound barrier is working is to test it and then to have compliance regulations in the ordinance. So if they say there's going to be a sound barrier and you say in your ordinance it will not be over 40 dBc and it needs to be dBc and not dBA, and you have lots of technical things. If you say X number of feet from the property, the noise has to be below this limit. Well, that's what it has to be. So they can build whatever sound barrier they want, or they can do it right. They have to do it right, and then you have to be able to enforce that as the city through fines or shutdowns or whatever it is. So there are technical solutions to all of these problems. It's just the cheap way to build a data center is to use as much water as possible, to not put in any sound barriers, to not do anything for the community. And so if you guys don't write strong ordinances and make them comply with what you want for your community, they will run all over you because, they're businesses, so they would rather make more money than less money. And so if you don't make them listen and you don't put in strict compliance, then that's how that works. So there can be sound barriers. It's just you have to make them build them. Yes.
Yes. Who pays for the sound barriers? Does state law allow municipalities to make the data centers pay for sound barriers?
Well, we haven't been very lucky at getting anything, the state to do much of anything. I would think it would have to be part of the local authority. Amy, do you have another one?
I do not have any others.
Does the taxpayer pay for the sound barriers?
Well,
I would imagine that the sound barrier would have to be paid by whoever the developer is. That's because it'd be part of the process. It'd be part of the process. I will say, on sound, I was reminded before I came here that again, one of the like a local commissioner in Loudoun County, again, kind of hotbed for data center development, Northern Virginia. He's got a nice little kind of 15, can't remember, 20 little 15 best practices for communities considering data centers. It's actually some useful stuff in here. I'm happy to share this with folks. But he recommends an audible dBA of 50, which is a lot less than just the standard kind of noise ordinance that most communities have. So it's interesting. He has all sorts of stuff on here that is based on his experience that I think is useful. Let's see. This is a question that has to do with water. How will data centers affect allocation of water in the Chattahoochee, with the Army Corps of Engineers, and kind of the fabled water wars with Alabama and Florida? And it is a good question, and it is a hard one to answer with specificity because to some degree, like it's hard to kind of put all the numbers together as far as how much water these individual facilities are actually going to need and consume. I think the number I came up with in the Chattahoochee was, I think, at least like 30 million gallons of water a day, which is like about as much water as a medium-sized city can use in Georgia. So that's just in one river basin. But again, in talking with my colleagues all over the state, it has been interesting to learn that in some ways, because of the water wars, I think the water management in the Chattahoochee River Basin is better than it is in other river basins. I have a colleague on the Okomoki who is in a very, very different situation where there are lots of data centers proposed in his communities for which they don't actually have the capacity. Like it doesn't exist. Like a data center shows up and says, I need 100 million gallons of water a day. But the local community is only able to actually generate like 30 million gallons a day. So it's a situation where like that community is going to have to find additional like water supply. They're going to have to build the infrastructure for it. So it's a very different situation in Middle Georgia compared to what I am experiencing in Chattahoochee.
We have been told by council data centers will bring revenue, jobs, lower to no property taxes. Any proof anywhere. I don't know how anybody could. I don't know that anybody could. I mean, you've been told about jobs. I don't know about revenue, and I don't know about property taxes. Let's see. How do you enforce ordinances? Oh gosh, that's I think that's a local level thing, and they have deep pockets and many corporate lawyers, and that's true. So I guess the best thing to do when we make those ordinances is just watertight as you could, right, Chris? Yeah, I mean if you create ordinances that are very clear and very tight, and also you have an authority that is responsible for, making sure those ordinances are honored. So you have to make sure of that too. Then you could do enforcement, but you'd have to really write them tightly and assign them to some group that would do enforcement.
And we've seen in some ordinances, especially for smaller towns in Georgia, because their compliance officer no longer exists due to budget cuts, they're making the data center pay the salary of the compliance officer. So you can do that. You can also make the data center pay for the independent third parties testing that has to be transparently published every 3 months. So you can put all that in the ordinance, and you can make the fines as big as you want. So, okay, we got one on vibrations of data centers' impacts on the land. A few things on that. They do noise. Once the data center isn't operational, they're noisy like we were talking about. It is a low-level noise, but it's not really a vibration noise. The impacts is more on humans and animals than it is on the land. And then what Chris was talking about with Meta. Was it Meta? Was it Facebook? I don't know.
No.
It was Meta. All right, right. Meta is Facebook now. While they were doing construction, they were blasting. And so this could have happened with any large industrial site. They were doing blasting, and the blasting screwed up the land formations, and that's how the water system got screwed up. So that was just bad construction processes that you could have linked to any poorly run construction. All right, are we?
Yeah, let's go over here. We put this down on the
Okay.
and that way we can.
Reading.
Yeah, reading. Okay. What is the amount of the tax credits and exemptions for Marietta's data centers? It's not a question I can answer. How many gallons of wastewater flow will the Grind data center contribute to the county treatment system, and what chemicals will it include? Also unknown. That is not something I can answer.
If they haven't put it in the DRI.
Correct. Right. So I was just looking back at my notes. I have like no information on water for any of the data centers proposed in Cobb County.
Well, and that brings me to something that I'd like to say. To me, the story here is we've got people who have the capability of, looking into these issues and these proposals and understanding them. But the truth of the matter is we don't have, that information has not been shared with the public. So, and I don't know that we have emphasized that as much as we should.
NDAs, that's all.
Yeah. Well, yes, and actually some states have passed laws to prohibit NDAs between local entities and data centers. A lot of them are doing that. So I don't think we should be apologizing for not having answers to these questions when the people who are making these proposals who want to use our water, and our land and whatever to not provide us with all the details that we want to know. So.
The last meeting, at least they said it was going to be a closed loop system, and the water would not come from.
They're gonna truck it in.
Yeah, they're going to truck it in. They didn't say where they're bringing it in.
Well, water has to come from somewhere. And one of my favorite things that was said tonight is there's only so much water, and you can't make more water, right?
Also, those truly closed loop systems, there are zero operational in the country right now. So they keep promising them, but engineers like to overpromise, says the engineer. All right. There are two parts to monthly electric bills: variable costs and fixed costs. Variable costs are driven by the price of fuel to generate the electricity, and these costs are very volatile. How will Marietta Power account for the unpredictability, especially the supplemental power and increased peak power purchased on the open market? How can you sort out the difference between the variable costs for data centers and the variable costs for residential and commercial customers? What is the anticipated peak demand? All right. Oh my God, that was a really long, dense question, but it's very well thought out. So yes, 100%. There are two parts to your electricity bill. You could also ask your legislator to pass a law that would say that they actually don't print those out for you on the bill, but that's a different statement. And Georgia Power is running those fun ads saying they've lowered your base rates, but I don't know if you've noticed, but we started a war, and now gas costs a lot more, and all of our power comes from gas. So that's why your bills are still going up despite the fact that they have lowered your base rates. Fun fact, large industrial centers and users negotiate a fixed fuel costs. So while your bills are going up because we started a war in Iraq, theirs are not. So that's going to be fun. They could require that they also pay variable fuel costs, but right now they are not paying variable, they are paying fixed rates because they are
Who's paying fixed rates?
large industrial users. That's like a common practice. So like the Hyundai plant is also getting a fixed rate because it is a large industrial user, and like we said, this made sense for large industrial users until we had an invasion of large industrial users, right? Like we've gotten one new auto plant, or I don't know, maybe 3 in the past like 25 years, and we've gotten 25 new data centers, right? So a fixed cost for a large user made sense until about right now. So that's the problem for that. How do you sort out their variable costs and the market and the stuff like that? The truth is you don't. And so that's the real problem. And like we talk to our lawyer friends who are down at the PSC all the time when they're building these rate cases and everything else. And honestly, then I just want to stab my eye out because it's like really complicated. But what they are saying is this is so hard. And so when they say that Georgia Power will not pass any of the costs on to us, they just have no way of guaranteeing that. Like it's too hard. One, it's too hard. And two, the things that they consider not part of their problem are these variable fuel costs, and also they are now expanding the gas pipeline across our state, which will cost billions of dollars. That infrastructure cost is not considered a need for the data centers. Okay.
I want to say something.
All right.
So, one of the things that Georgia does not have, and this is another topic for another day, but it's really important to me, and that is we do not have a consumer utility council. We're one of either 3 or 5 states in the whole country that does not have a consumer utility council that actually sits down and negotiates with the PSC about any kind of rate proposals. And the legislation has been introduced again by Senator Chuck Hufstetler, but keeps getting killed. And we had one, and it was abolished by Sonny Perdue when he became governor. So we really, really need that. We need someone at the table with PSC who is an independent advocate and actually can discuss who's not on the side of the utilities. And Georgia Power keeps saying, the utilities keep saying, well, they can do that work. Well, you can't serve 2 masters. So I hope we can talk about this again in the future because we really, really, really need a consumer utility council.
Okay, we have a question here. What's the annual requirement for the Grind data center and the Vantage data center? It's unknown, as I've said. Can't find that information anywhere. Which public utilities are going to provide the water? It would ultimately, Cobb County Marietta Water Authority would be the wholesale provider through the city of Marietta. I guess is it Power and Light or Water and Light, Water and Power? So that's the water piece there.
Yeah, we're chatting through these questions. It's great. All right.
So this next question is: the rapid growth of data centers is putting a strain on our electric grid. True. All right. Georgia Power recently projected the need for 82,000 additional megawatts. It's now up to 14 megawatts. How will this demand be satisfied? Mainly through the addition of new natural gas turbines. At what estimated cost? Your guess is as good as mine. It changes daily. Marietta Power, the next 2 are about Marietta Power, which I don't know anything about. So they own a portion of the statewide grid. What will be the cost for the required grid upgrades? Marietta requires HDL data centers to submit annual public disclosure reports on their energy, water usage. I have no idea, but you should ask them to. All right, a House bill was introduced to pass a statewide moratorium on the construction of data centers. Will city officials abide by this moratorium if it becomes law? I mean, until 2 years ago, we usually did abide by the laws. So, Godspeed on that one. In theory, yes. Are Marietta officials working on local policies, building, and zoning codes to better manage future requests?
Sorry.
Is anybody okay? I don't know.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Okay. So lots of questions, lots of information. And perhaps I have not made this clear enough, but the reason we're having this meeting is because you have the power, okay? You guys, we wanted to bring you here. We want you to know how to find out who your city council person is and how to contact them. And you need to contact them. You need to follow through with that, because it's one thing to go to a meeting and kind of raise a ruckus, but to me, the most effective thing you can do is say to any elected official, I live and I vote in your district. I live and I vote in your ward. You are my council person. I expect, this is what I want. I have this information. I want you to listen to me. So, I know we don't, I'm trying to think, how often do we elect city council members? Every 4 years. Okay. But honestly, you really do have the power. It's just that we don't use it enough. We just don't use it enough, y'all. But you've got to, I hope that all of you who are concerned about this will pick up the phone, email, call, and reach out to these people. If people say, I hear people say, I don't want to bother them. Or they say to me, I don't want to, why do you think we're there? We're there, I'm there to be your voice at the state capitol, but they are there to be your voice and your representation at the level of city policy. So you are absolutely doing what you should and can do all the time. But I know that you all care about this. I just hope that you will realize you really do have more power than I think you realize. So I hope you'll use it.
The contractor for Powers Ferry said they put up barriers all around, sound barriers, but some slide that you shared showed the noise went farther out. Will these barriers, say if they're 10 feet tall or whatever, and they keep the decibel noise in the current range, but how about further out? Will it go up and over in maybe half an hour or half a mile out?
The truth of it is, we don't know, because Chris talked about, Amy talked about testing them. I don't know what kind of barriers these are. They may look really great, but are they really legitimate sound barriers that can deal with this kind of noise?
Well, they're supposed to be keeping.
Well, I know they are, but you can put up pretty interesting props that don't necessarily do what you think they're going to do. And I think I think we need to have an ordinance about the level of sound and the distance, and also they need to be tested. So, I don't think they should be able to get away with saying, we've put up barriers. Barriers for what? There's a big difference between a barrier that cuts off interstate noise and, I don't think we know anything about the level of noise that these kinds of places generate. we haven't dealt with it in our lives here in Marietta, as far as I know.
I have a question. I didn't get you right. Speaking over general, all these data centers and the energy and power needs and moving to using more natural gas as we expand our energy resources, has there been talk about the air pollution?
Yes. Yes. The current EPA doesn't care about air pollution. But yes, there's a lot of talk about air pollution, and there's a lot of talk. Natural gas, I'm pointing at Chris like he's the water person. Natural gas turbines use a lot of water too.
Is there any groups that you guys have partnered with to help organize folks? Because clearly a lot of folks, are opposed to the idea of like data centers. You guys got, the Science for Georgia, the Chattahoochee, River Keepers. Are there any other groups? Because I've seen multiple groups, like I'm in 6 different groups for local different counties for opposing data centers, but they're not really working together. Is there anyone that you guys are working together doing the experts?
So you need to be talking to Hannah right there, the girl in red, lady in red. I'm not gonna sing. Hannah is running a statewide network of local groups, giving them support. I sit on all those phone calls too. Chris comes to them as a guest star a lot. So yes, If you would like to connect those groups, we welcome all comers and talk to Hannah.
Well, also, Indivisible Cobb is here. Indivisible Cobb is one good way, fairly easy way for us to get information out to you in terms of this information and the YouTube and whatever. And so I think we all need to work together, but there are groups working really hard on this.
I'm going to do the shout out to Hannah's from Sierra Club. It's a real group.
They're great.
And Gipple is working very hard on this, and Georgia Wand as well. Oh, sorry, Georgia Interfaith Power and Light. Thank you. So there's a bunch of groups that are operating statewide, and then we are trying to get as many resources as we can to localities.
But let me say it again, beat you over the head. So this is a decision, what we're talking about tonight is a decision that is being made by your city council people in this city. They are the people who will make this decision about this data center. I mean, we're gonna move on, there's gonna be other issues, and I know that, but about this data center, this is a city of Marietta issue. We're talking to you right now about it, and we're telling you, we're giving you information and telling you how to contact the people who will make that decision. And I think they'll probably make it by, possibly by their next council meeting, which is next week. There was also, you had some Google links to a toolkit. There were some really good links.
Yeah, if you go on the Science for Georgia website, scienceforgeorgia.com, spelled out SCI, science for, I can't spell. And you go to data, and there's a whole website on data centers, and we have toolkits. The link to Hannah's toolkit is on there, and also ordinances and everything else.
Can you move that back one of the slides, that you had it on the slide?
Yeah, hold on one sec.
As well.
So you guys have been an amazing audience. I can't, we've filled the room. You've asked great questions. You've listened. You have your marching orders. We're going to go back to the slide you need. I'm so grateful that you all came and are joining us in this fight. And, this is our city, this is your city, this is my city, and let's do our darndest to make sure that the decisions made on this reflect the wishes of the voters. Thank you so much to Chris. They took the time out for doing this, and I'm very grateful. They do a lot of this, and actually, I couldn't do work at the Capitol. I'm pulling Chris out all the time saying, explain to me whether this is a good or a bad bill. Tell me whether. So they're also down at the Capitol, and they're hugely helpful on bills when you're trying to figure out what the heck is going on with the bills. So they're helpful to us in lots of ways. And also the Sierra Club is a solid everyday presence in the Capitol as well, working really, really, really hard on environmental issues. So shout out to all three. Thank you so much for coming. I'm so thrilled that so many of you came, and I'm really grateful. And march on, right?